You really are a breath of fresh air as a leader. When you have self-awareness, oh my gosh, you can grow, and you can grow exponentially.
The lessons that I learned in those really tough years, though, were invaluable. I would be a completely different person if I hadn't navigated all of that.
I learned to really look inward, that we have the capability to overcome any challenges put in front of us, and we have to face them.
About 2 years ago, when I was asked to step up and lead my organization at the level that I'm at now, I realized that I need to do it my way, and I can't put on the job of president like it's a blazer. I have to actually do it from the heart and do it the way that I do it and trust that that's going to be good enough.
Today, we are in excellent company with the President of CampusDoor, Sara Parrish. Let's start by just sort of telling the audience, what do you do now? And then I'll get into some questions.
So right now, I lead a technology company that focuses on the origination of student loans and other student higher education related products. So our company is one part technology company, one part processing company, and a whole bunch of amazing people. And I am thrilled to have the honor of leading this organization at this very, very exciting time for us.
Well, goodness, how many students have you touched throughout this country? Do you have a head count?
Yeah, so we several million, about 2.2 million students that we have served.
Wow, that's got to be so fulfilling to know that you're helping to fund their education.
It really is. I mean, education is one of those things that we believe that everyone's entitled to pursue, but it's very, very expensive. Mm-hmm. And that gap between what students can get in scholarships and federal loans versus what higher education actually costs is large. Mm-hmm. So we love empowering lenders to kind of deliver creative products to get in there and make sure that those students have the options to pursue the education of their dreams.
Well, I'm probably grateful for you at one point in my career, right? But I paid off my student loans for all those listening in. And for those of you who haven't yet, I know you're on that track. So let's go into, how did you get where you are today? I mean, did you just decide one day you wanted to open a student loan company?
No, it's been an interesting path, I think. I majored in English and environmental science in college and had a really kind of interesting, twisty, turny path to get where I am today. I ran government services contracts. I worked at a hospital for years. I worked for an engineering company, kind of tapping into the environmental science aspect of my education. But like so many people, last big recession in 2008 kind of followed me. Mm-hmm. So I think that kind of pushed me from industry to industry a little bit. I ended up working for an engineering company when some of the municipal backlog was drying up, which actually trailed the recession by a few years. And things were kind of getting a little dicey there. And at the time I was in grad school. Well, I met some people that worked for a large student loan servicer. I was very interested in getting into leadership roles. And I ended up making a really kind of hard pivot in my career to being a supervisor for a large student loan servicer. So took a step back in my career in the interest of getting kind of into the leadership field and grew from there. It's about 12 years ago now that I made that leap, spent several years in servicing, and now for the last 8 years have been on the origination side. I love the origination side. It's my favorite so far because this is really where the innovation is. It's where we have the opportunity to actually do things that are different, that are new, that are exciting. So we really, from where we sit in the industry, get to drive some of the exciting new stuff. So that's why I really like where I am now.
Where did you learn your leadership skills? Was there someone that you followed? Is it instinctive? But give me sort of your track to become this great leader you've become.
I think that I've had the privilege of working for just some absolutely amazing leaders. And when I think about, what they all have in common and the things that I've wanted to emulate, I mean, each of them have this, each of the great leaders that I've worked for have really different ways of doing it. So it's not that they've all been the same. They've all been very different, but they're all very true to themselves and they're all very authentic. And so I strive to lead with authenticity first and foremost. About 2 years ago, when I was asked to step up and lead my organization at the level that I'm at now, I wrestled a little bit. I had a few days where I was, just not doubting that I could do it. I knew that I could do it, but just, just thinking about how I would do it. And in those kind of crazy couple of sleepless days while I was really wrestling with it, I realized that I need to do it my way. And I can't, put on the job of president kind of like it's a blazer. I have to actually do it from the heart and do it the way that I do it and trust that that's going to be good enough. And trust that the people that I am accountable to will believe that that's good enough. And fortunately, so far, I think it's worked out just fine.
Well, when you think of leadership today, and I heard you say there was a common theme among all of them, and being authentic was one. When you're looking for a leader, I'm assuming you want authenticity. What other qualities do you want?
Curiosity, I think, closely follows authenticity. For me, I've tried to approach every job like it was the job that I was going to be in for the long haul. I've tried to develop competency along the way and really get nosy, get curious, understand how everything works and really master it. I highly value that in the leaders that report to me. That transcends generations. That transcends, it transcends everything. I mean, anyone at any point in the organization can be like that. But in my mind, that is what makes somebody successful in really probably most industries and most organizations, but certainly ours. And you can't teach someone to be curious. I can teach someone how to handle HR situations. I can teach someone this industry. I can teach someone the compliance aspects of it, but I can't teach someone to be curious. You either are or you aren't, in my experience. But beyond that, you can be authentic and you can be curious and you can still be a little bit of a jerk. In our organization, we don't have those. Those don't work out very well for us. So empathy, I think, kind of follows those other two things as something that is absolutely critical to be able to lead the way that I would expect people to lead and the way that I expect to be led.
Have you ever had a really bad boss?
Yes. Yeah, I think we all have. I've had some doozies, but I found that I've actually, in some cases, learned more from the ones that I didn't jive with than the ones that I have. It's good. You kind of learning how not to be is almost as important as learning how to be. And I think that, some of the leaders that I've had that, maybe I won't say they were bad bosses. Maybe they were somebody's perfect boss, but they weren't the perfect boss for me. A lot of them, I've always tried to really reflect on it and figure out what was working and what wasn't. Some of it is just that, people's expectations shift over time. And perhaps the way that they were leading me worked really well at various points in the past and just didn't work for me at that point. For me, one of the things that's been really, that's been tough and has probably defined like what is a bad boss for me is somebody who kind of holds me down. I try to think about that all the time as I'm lifting up the people that report to me. I don't presume to have all the answers, and I don't ever assume that everyone thinks and acts exactly like I do, especially the people that I lead. I mean, I embrace the fact that we're all different. That makes our organization so much stronger. But I do always try to make sure that I'm empowering them and getting out of their way and lifting them up and shining the spotlight rather than holding people down, because I've left organizations because of that in the past and don't want that for any of the people that I'm responsible for right now.
I'm sort of smiling because you're just the kindest human being, because you just sort of gave an excuse for bad bosses. Like maybe they weren't good for me. Maybe they were good for somebody else. That you have this beautiful quality about you. Hopefully you've heard that. Certainly you've probably heard that multiple times. And if anybody's just listening to this podcast, I encourage you actually to watch it, because Sara, you glow, whether you know that or not. And I just want to be your friend because I'm just going to feel better about myself being around you. But just in hearing you, because I've had bad bosses and I can't be you. I cannot go, I think they were probably good for somebody else. I don't know if they were really good. But anyway, and mine was very much with yours where they held you down. They didn't build you up. So mine is either build them up or beat them up. And I felt like my old boss was a beat them up. Now he'd build you up for a minute to make you feel good and then he'd put you in your place type thing. So how did you become this light? I mean, tell me a little bit, because when you say empathy and being authentic, someone helped us along the way to become that. Maybe you were just born that way, but I'm guessing there's some people that have influenced you. So I'd love to hear sort of who's inspired you and who's been that influence for you to be that light.
I'm fortunate to come from a family that was just wonderful. I mean, my parents are huge influences on me to this day, and really supported me along the way. But I watched, especially my father, working in the law enforcement field, kind of watched him even try to bring empathy to that. And even now, he's been in that field for a very long time and is constantly kind of reinventing himself. And now is, working in a different element of that field that's very much, trying to shine a light on people and lift people up. And that's not necessarily typical of that field. So, I definitely watched him navigate a career where that was not the common way to be, but that was the way that he approached it. Yeah. And watched him have successes, but also be able to look at himself in the mirror. And for me, that's huge. I enjoy I certainly am enjoying the role that I have and enjoying the responsibilities that I have. But at the end of the day, I need to know that I've done right by people, provided that they deserve it, and have, handled things the way that they should be handled, and have just been fair. I think that we all have, that having the challenging career experiences, I really truly think that the challenging career experiences have kind of forged me into a leader that can, at least try every day to be as empathetic as possible to people. Now, I can do that because, we drive results here, and we have a very high quality organization with high quality outputs, and, with not a lot of issues, and, things are good. I don't know that, everybody at every point in time that has kind of worked in my reporting structures would say that I'm, always soft or always glowing or anything like that. But it's kind of right now, you get to the point where when things are going well and everything's kind of working, and you can actually have the luxury of being able to take stock of everything.
You're in a good place, when you say, because we all have, I heard you say you learn through those challenges, and those challenges build us. 2008, man, talk about building me. Oh, Lord, when we hit that valley, what about you in your career? Where were you in 2008, and what did you learn?
Yeah. So, when I said that the recession kind of chased me, it really felt like that. So right before 2008, I was working on a government services contract. It was for FEMA, and things got, there were some things that had happened in 2005 with FEMA that eventually caught up to some people. Contracts were cut. As a contractor, I lost my job before 2008, right before 2008. So I was looking for work right when everybody else ended up needing to start looking for work. I ended up working several jobs at a time. I worked 3 jobs actually for a while during all of that. None of those jobs had anything to do with what I went to school for. None of them were full-time. And just really hustled for months before I landed in a better spot. I was outside of, I know many of your listeners work in the mortgage industry. I was not in the mortgage industry at that time, but experienced it from outside of that. And it was rough. Mm-hmm. It was rough. We pulled through. I mean, I was a newlywed. We had just purchased a home right before home values tanked. We ended up, like so many people, in that home for many more years than we thought we would be in that home. We were, hand to mouth for a little while there. The lessons that I learned in those really tough years, though, were invaluable. I would be a completely different person if I hadn't navigated all of that. I would not have been in the place where I valued full-time work like I value it now. Like I value benefits like I value them now. It impacted everything about my spending and saving habits. Wow. I think for so many of us that were early in our careers when that happened, really at any point in the career, but for those of us that hadn't really fallen into a kind of comfortable grown-up life at that point, and we're kind of still on the very early end, we could have been a completely different cohort of people than I think we've ended up being. And for many of the people that came out of school, when I came out of school in 2006, that kind of ended up caught up in all of that in the early years. Things were booming right before that for people across all industries. We came out with these expectations that were almost immediately dashed on the ground, but really for good. I mean, we don't, so many of the people that I am kind of in this cohort with, we've never taken anything for granted because we kind of came out and it was pulled away from us right away.
I was 6 years in business at the time. So I'm 21, I'm about to hit my 22-year anniversary, but in 2008, I was 6 years in. Huge staff, huge space, huge bills, huge overhead. And when that hit, when you talk about lessons learned, I learned man, resilience. I learned to really look inward, that we have the capability to overcome any challenges put in front of us, and we have to face them. And once you face it, then that's the fun part, to go, how do I pivot, shift, adjust? And the fact that you came out at that time, right? And you're still young and I'm older. I never looked at it in the perspective of what happened to, I'm going to say, the younger generation during that time. What did they have to do to adjust? And look at you now, right? I love that you said that you value full-time work, benefits, et cetera. And there's things that I just take for granted, right? And so tell me this, you have a team now that's depending on you. And I'm guessing there's been good and bad times in the company, or struggles or challenges. Mm-hmm. How do you keep them motivated?
I think that for me, keeping the team motivated comes down to regular communication. So we get, I try to have one-on-ones with all of my direct reports weekly. I try to encourage them to have one-on-ones with all of their direct reports weekly, and kind of they're on. So for the entire organization, that should be happening. But actually getting together as often as we can. So for my executive team, that's once a week, at least, sometimes more often. And talking through the challenges, not hiding them, but bringing them out, and really soliciting, consensus building to the extent possible. Obviously there's a place for consensus building, and then sometimes you just have to make the decision. Sure. For me, one of the things that I think has been motivational for the team in the last really 2 years that I've been at the helm is that we're decisive. Mm-hmm. When things are challenging, as they have been for us for, the last 2 years, really. I mean, the rising interest rate environment, and we can certainly talk about that, but the rising interest rate environment has been just as impactful to our business, really, as it has to mortgage, mm-hmm. with refinance kind of going away, and bringing us back to a business that is almost entirely seasonal. That is tough, and keeping people motivated when we see what's happening on the revenue side, that is difficult. But I think that the team understanding that there's somebody here who's going to make the decisions, that's going to act decisively, that is going to plot the course forward, but bring everybody along. That's been really big. Transparency can be motivating and can also be the opposite of motivating. So some lessons, that's a lesson that I learned kind of early on in my tenure as president of this organization is, transparency is something that we decided on like immediately. I was like, I'm going to be radically transparent. I'm going to, share as much detail as I responsibly can with the team. And then kind of quickly realized that doesn't work for everyone at every level of the organization. So now, keeping the transparency that's responsible, but making sure that it's infused with the plan, not just this is what is happening, but this is what we're doing about it. And this is how you can be part of it. I think that's been something I think I've hit my stride, and the organization has kind of hit our stride on that more recently. But you have to be you have to communicate that regularly, consistently, often, in person, on Zooms, face to face. Like you have to do that via many channels, and it just, the consistency is very, very key.
Well, you and I have something in common. We call our one-on-ones in our company. So part of our culture, I have a list of a thing called non-negotiables. And it is all of the things that make up the culture of Zenix. And I think by the time this podcast airs, I'll have already told the team that we just won another culture award, because I don't want to ruin their fun. But just so you know, we won another culture award. And I keep going, how in the world do we keep winning, right? I am an intentional leader, but one of the things you said profoundly, I believe, is going to be part of your award-winning culture, and that is regular one-on-ones. It sounds so simple. It really does, right? I just meet with my people once a week. We call them power meetings. And everybody, all my executive leaders and team knows that they will have a one-on-one with their direct leader every week or every 2 weeks, depending on the nature of their role. But you can't wait to the end of the year for the, let's do an annual review. But you'd be surprised how few people meet with their manager on a regular basis. So great instincts for you on that one.
So that's something that's really differentiated for me, a good leader from a great leader, from a crummy leader, they exist, is that prioritization of that one-on-one time, especially for team members. Well, I would say especially for team members that want it, but also for team members that don't think they want it, because you can usually get them on board with that fairly quickly. But leaders, especially senior leaders, we end up with crazy travel schedules. We end up with last minute priorities. One thing that I have asked my team to hold me accountable for, and I think, we're doing a good job there, is if it has to move, it has to move, but let's reschedule it, and let's reschedule it in the same week. Because, rarely is there a week where there's no time. You can usually squeeze some time, even if it's just, hey, while we're driving home, let's just jump on the phone and use the time. But that prioritization, it's a way to meet people's needs, even if they don't think that it's a need that they have. It is a need that they have.
So what are you most proud of right now?
My team. I have the best team in the industry. That is what has made us who we are. We have a very tenured leadership team, all promoted from within. There's none of us on our executive team at CampusDoor right now who came in from outside the organization into a role on the executive team. We've all grown into these roles. We've grown into these roles deliberately, and we've kind of built the competencies and the skill sets as we've come along. We all came in different roles than we're in now, and I'm enormously proud of that, because we're all practitioners and leaders, and I think that for an organization like ours, that's important, and I know that's become culturally important for us too. So. The fact that, there are several people in our organization at the vice president level who came in as seasonal processors that have grown over the last 8, 10, 12 years into vice president level, and fabulous vice president level employees. I mean, it's great, and it's very helpful for the entire organization. It means that, if you're coming in as a seasonal processor, there's concrete examples of where your career can take you if you're willing to be curious, empathetic, and authentic.
Listen, career pathing and knowing that there's opportunity for growth is the best retention tool you could ever give someone, because most people that are jumping around from company to company today aren't staying long enough to garner new skills. And so if you offer that, there's a huge advantage in your culture. So how many are you managing? Mostly locals today, or do you have a hybrid team? Can you sort of give me the lay of the land of what you're having to deal with as a leader?
So for years, probably about 24 of our 28 years in existence, we were entirely local. Central Pennsylvania, entirely local. At one point, we had hundreds, like multiple hundreds, like almost 400 employees, and they were all local. Now we have just under 100 year-round full-time employees, and they are not all local. During COVID, we made this pivot to remote, like every organization, almost every organization. And we, many of our employees decided that they were going to chase their dreams elsewhere across the country. We have a staff member who ended up with a ranch in Texas and wanted to continue to work for us, but is there. We have staff members who have we have this little group of people in Arizona and a group of people in Florida that just kind of went elsewhere. I don't blame them. The weather is a lot better there than it is in Pennsylvania. So we've really done a hard pivot into a hybrid environment. Okay. Hybrid, in my experience, is actually a little tougher than all remote or all in person. Because you have to be super deliberate about the culture not excluding the people that don't live here. If we were all remote, we could get together a couple times a year and have a big party and get the FaceTime and then go back to working from home. If we're all in the office, culture can't really be an afterthought. It still needs to be deliberate, but you can rely on those little formal interactions throughout the day to kind of keep people connected. You can get together with a whiteboard, which historically has been hugely important to our culture here. But when you're hybrid, you have the people, the group that's together all the time, and you have that group that's really only connecting via screens. So to keep everybody together, this is fairly recently, we decided to start to fly in some of the leaders that work elsewhere in the country so that they can get together with people who are in the office and with their teams in person somewhat regularly. We're shooting for quarterly, but we just started it. So we've only done it once so far. It was a raging success. We're going to continue to do that. And the other thing that we did was invest in some of our technology in the office to enable easier hybrid coordination. So for us, that looks like rooms that are super intuitively connected to Teams, with whiteboards that have that the camera can be on, with shared whiteboard technology, and with it just needs to be super intuitive and easy, and everybody needs to just be able to, almost as an afterthought, connect like that. When we did that, we found that we were able to actually make some strides forward instead of just treading water. So during COVID, like so many organizations, things eventually, once you got past kind of, okay, we're finally remote and we're gonna tread. Things felt for us like we're used to a very rapid pace of innovation. Things started to feel like they were stagnating a little bit. Sure, we were executing on what we had to execute for our clients, and we were, keeping everything, as fresh as it needed to, but we weren't actually generating new ideas and truly new functionality. But, now that we've kind of solved for some of that hybrid collaboration, that the pace of that innovation has picked back up, which feels really good for all of us.
You may be ahead of your time, whether you realize or not, because as a learning company today, I'm getting lots of requests or questions on how to preserve the culture. And because you're right, it'd be so much easier if we were just all hybrid or all in person, but because of the blend, it can be challenging. But I'm finding there's a lot of leaders who haven't yet figured out how to be intentional about building that remote culture. And I think early on in this conversation, you mentioned communicate. And I just love how authentic you are by saying, hey, I should be radically transparent, and that I learned. Today, what is the greatest skill you want to work on for yourself to continue to lead your company?
So for me, and I've encountered maybe it's somewhat gendered, I'm not sure, but for me, some of the things that I want to work on, and I'm so excited to get to work on, are some of the hard skills. So I have an amazing accounting team that supports me, an amazing finance team. Casey, you know some of these guys, they are fabulous, right? Best in class. But I'm, maybe naturally curious enough to want to master that stuff for myself so that I can truly understand it at a deeper level. So I'm really excited to have the opportunity and to have a patient enough finance and accounting team to kind of let me drill into some of those hard skills. I think that that's because, you can always be better at something. I know I can always be better at something. I'm in that. Every year, I try to look ahead and think about what I want to achieve in the next calendar year. And so some of those, like, they're small things. They're not maybe exceptionally strategic, but some of those things are on my personal growth roadmap for 2024. I think that, leaders, we get caught up in the next really shiny thing sometimes. For me, I'm always trying to balance that with continued growth of the hard skills as well. So the soft skills are also really big for us. One thing, and this is not a paid advertisement, but one thing that we have really started investing in last year in a big way is training and development for people beyond just the senior team.
Sure.
So that's been really important for us too. And that continues to be important to me personally too. That's for me, but also for the team. And especially getting into that mid-level management group to give them some actual like soft and hard skill training so that they can kind of continue to develop too. I'm always wary of investing in just myself and my direct reports and not others. We're really trying to push that down throughout the organization because so many leaders, as we all know, so many of us find ourselves in these leadership positions with no real playbook. And so trying to develop that playbook for our newer managers and kind of like frontline level managers too. So, and as they learn, and to kind of take it back to answer the question that you actually asked, as they learn those things, I kind of butt myself into their trainings too, to see what I've maybe missed as I've come along the way and what's changed and what are some of the best practices that I can adopt too. And then we're kind of learning together, and there's nothing like learning together to kind of bond a team together.
Oh my goodness. Well, I got to tell you, every time we have a training class, program, etc., I'm always looking to see if the sponsor, the one who engaged Zenix, is actually present, because it makes a huge difference, right? Because it sends a message that you're important, and you're so important. I'm here to help reinforce and learn myself because you don't always know the nuances of what we're training. So I applaud you for being part of that. So, by the way, I just love you dearly. You really are a breath of fresh air as a leader who I just think when you have self-awareness, oh my gosh, you can grow and you can grow exponentially. It's the leader that says they know everything that is challenging. So I love the vulnerability and what you're sharing. So how does 2024 look for you and your team?
It's going to be a great year. So, we've come through a tough time, as have so many of your listeners that are kind of close to the mortgage space. Mm-hmm. It's been challenging. It's been challenging for us for some of the same reasons, but we've persevered. We have we've taken some of the time where the volume was a little lower to really optimize the process and to learn and to cross train and to become a stronger organization, to reorganize in some strategic ways. So we've really focused on setting ourselves up for scale. And the top of the funnel is looking great. So we're going to be able to really capitalize on some of the things that we've done now that there's going to be more coming through. From a business development perspective, we've had some very nice wins that we've worked very hard for. And so 2024 looks bright. We're excited and the team's in a good spot. We're ready to rock and roll.
Okay, so let's end with this. I was going to end with that, but I've got to ask you this because you just mentioned there's a lot of people right now in multiple industries. You mentioned mortgage, but the financial services, banking, there's a lot of struggling industries out there. What advice would you give to the executive leader? Let's end it with that.
Work as hard as you can to stay big picture. When things are difficult, I think all of us have that instinct to go deep, get into the weeds, cut expense, just survive. And all of that's important. Survival, you have to get through, survive till 25, I heard at some of the more recent mortgage events. So you have to do that. But you can also take the opportunity when things are a little slower to try to stay strategic, to try to look ahead, to not cut into muscle or bone, and to kind of keep your organization as healthy as it can be so that you're ready when things do turn around. The first instinct when things really got tough for us as rates started going up and refinance volume started drying up, the instinct can be to just cut and to tighten everything up and get really into the weeds and be, looking, day to day, week to week, month to month financials. And you do have to do that and you have to have people who do that. But, for me, the challenge has been to compartmentalize that and to continue to think ahead so that you're ready, to not do any of those like Hail Mary pivots that some people in our industry did that ended up really kind of wrecking the organization, to know your competencies, to trust that you're good at what you do, to trust your clients to stick with you and to just get through it. So I would say resist the urge to get to get super myopic in your focus and stay as high level as you can be while understanding those details, of course.
Woo, profound. And how true is that? I can remember back in 2008 and now with what's going on in the world, staying big picture because your team needs to know where they're going. And it's not just survival, it is actually thriving. How will you thrive as you survive at the same time? So, Miss Sara, thank you so much. I mean, what a blessing it is just to get some insight from you and to spend a little bit of time. You have such unbelievable intuition about leadership, and there's been some amazing people I know that have fed you that you've gotten to model, but you certainly need to know how much I appreciate you and your skill set. So anybody listening in, I certainly hope as an executive leader you can look at yourself and go, am I being authentic and transparent and empathetic, and am I curious? And I'm going to tell you right now, in the world of AI, everybody better get really curious as to what the AI will do to their business long term. So thank you so much for your time, Sara. What a blessing.
Thanks, Casey. Thank you so much for having me.